you remember Sunday mornings at Mom's house? Well, now those days are gone and you're alone. Try to reach out and find yourself some company, but no one ever picks up the phone. What if I told you there was a special place for you? What if that place were real? Well, it's not, and you better stop hoping and just get yourself to bed. Tomorrow you gotta wake up and do it all over again.
Just hit the button!
Just hit record. We are back after a small hiatus.
Yes.
I mean, I think it was a small, big hiatus. Hiatus.
It was something.
Hicious.
Well,
we're back with our, what is it, highly anticipated episode 3.
Episode 3 of Nerds in the Attic.
But 3 is what to fear. And today we have a very special guest, my buddy Joel.
Hello,
everybody. Welcome Joel. Joel.
Hey everybody, this is Joel from Dead Within Days.
Thank you.
What's going on?
Social security number and password, please.
1111111.
Hold on.
Hey, you gotta write this down.
So your password is 1, 2, 3, 4.
No, it's the word 1. You have to spell it out. O-N-E like 6 times.
It's the stupidest combination I've ever heard.
It's 90s texting.
I like it.
So, we are at my newly opened tattoo studio, the Nameless Ink, North Babylon, New York. We're all having fun. We're after hours.
Shameless plug!
Oh yeah, I'm right away I'm a whore. But no, that ties into what we're talking about because it's late at night. I've been tattooing all day. I'm exhausted. Louis, you came to see me first.
I did.
And I was like...
You were pretty tired. Matter of fact, I actually felt bad knocking on the door
I
because
didn't want to do this.
I felt like I was interrupting your
time
alone.
And then you started talking about stuff that fucking got my gears going.
Yes, I did.
What were we talking about?
Well, first we were talking about Cobra Kai, but then it kind of like, segue after segue. As all of our conversations go, segue into segue into segue.
I feel like Lou knows how to press my buttons when I'm tired.
It's not hard.
That's why I said to you when you first got here, I was like, I woke him up.
Yeah. Let's give him a subject thing that he just pisses him off and he just won't shut up.
Very passionate conversation as an introduction. But that's a good thing, I think.
I agree. But then that led into, what is it? Too much? Am I okay saying this or am I going to get canceled?
We already got canceled from our Michael Jackson episode. That's why we were on the hiatus. Remember the jokes? Because, the black dog, they do matter.
There was too many of them.
Yeah.
There was too many of them.
Let's go after the white dog.
The white dog. Got to cancel that one.
Yeah.
The white dog's greed.
The white dog. And too much PC.
Too much PC going on in the world right now.
Into, specifically
movies,
media, comics.
Shows, it's being forced down your throat. It's not natural.
Yeah.
How do you push an envelope that has to be safe for everybody?
And we're not here to offend anyone, first and foremost. We're just... Okay, never mind. We are here to offend you.
Luke speaks for everyone but Rob.
I speak for the peep that's dampening our sound right now. But at the end of the day...
It stifles creativity?
It stifles creativity. It also elaborates. It just... I don't even know the perfect word.
Now, in the interest of explaining it further, how would, too much PC, too much of an agenda stifle creativity in what way?
Well...
For the listeners.
For the beautiful example we brought up before was the whole thing with Velma. Is why are we now having this whole organized character that we've all known?
Highly established character.
And now sprinkling in the fact that she's gay, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it.
Well, you're okay.
I'm just saying, where did this come about?
I think What is it?
Well, to what you said before, I think the changes, what matters is when it starts to change the story itself, you know, because representation doesn't have to be all-encompassing to matter. You know, so like with like you mentioned Dumbledore as a character now that's going through some like aesthetic changes.
Right, to make him African American.
Right, if he changes, you know, a race, that's completely, you know, to me, or like what we agreed upon before was like it's okay as long as like his origin story stays the same. He's still the same character, you know, it just being portrayed in a different way. Right. But like if they go back and change he learned witchcraft in Africa or something, and like his fundamental elements start to just be altered to fit a more contemporary mindset, I think is disparaging to like the originality of art. You know what I mean? And at times, because the social view of art is always evolving, and if we keep going back and changing the steps in progress we do to get to these variations, then the variations mean very little, I think. You know,
because they have changed races before in different movies very successfully. And I think we mentioned two just right off the bat was Perry White originally in the comics was white, and then he was played by Lawrence Fishburne, which was phenomenal, but that his race had nothing to do with his story whatsoever, and he's such a great actor, and it came out phenomenal. Michael Clarke Duncan.
Yeah, yes, it's Kingpin and Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck.
He was perfect. I honestly, any single time outside of the comic book, when I think of Wilson Fisk now, I personally always think of Michael Clarke Duncan because he was so huge and perfect. I mean, he played Kingpin perfectly, but they didn't even say anything about
they didn't, you know, like
so
build
it's
something
almost
new.
to the point that like that character, if they are changed, has to bring like more to the table than just that change. You know, I guess it can't be the only substance the change brings to the series.
Right, and then like I was saying earlier, the other side of the argument is to a degree with especially certain characters that have already been well established and you know what they look like and they've been embedded into your brain for years, and then they just change the race or whatever, or make them gay or you know, especially when you know it's forced. I feel like in a way
they're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Right, that's even more offensive because it's like, okay, well, we need to give this race group or you know, this group of people.
Yeah, this.
Well, we're just going to give you this character. We're going to change it just so you have something. Right. So I feel like in a way that's you know, offensive because we're going to give this to you because you don't have anything.
It implies that it's charity, you know, which isn't the goal of art.
Exactly. As opposed
systematic
to
racism.
As opposed to, you know, coming up with an original character.
Collectively, I think we can all agree that inclusiveness of all people are important in pop culture media and movies and cinema.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's the way it's being done is where the issue is. Not that they're changing races, not that they're changing genders. It's the way it's being done, and also the lack of effort taking actual established, let's say, African American characters like Bishop of the X-Men, Storm of the X-Men, making these characters as big as their white counterparts.
Right.
Because when Avengers first came out, during that time in the comics, those particular Avengers weren't big comic characters that people were longing for. They turned them into very popular characters.
The B team.
Right, basically. Exactly. The B team that nobody cared about. Hence why Sony picked up Spider-Man, Fox picked up X-Men, but nobody wanted Captain America with his little red booties. You know?
No, yeah.
But so that type of effort can be placed towards, you know, superheroes of color, and it would be phenomenally successful if the effort was placed.
Oh, you know,
the genuine formula works. You know, like you're saying, as long as it's genuine, the formula is proven to work.
See now, and something else too that I actually just thought about that we didn't even discuss earlier, because what you saying Captain America just sparked my brain. So back all those years ago, and even in the Captain America Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier series, they had what was it, Black Captain America, basically.
Oh, the older gentleman that he was. That was a phenomenal.
Yes.
I loved that personally.
And even in that show, even Falcon, Anthony Mackie's character, says there was a black superhero all these years and nobody knew about him. Nobody knew about him.
Right.
And
but
I
if he
think
was marketed and packaged the same way that Captain America was during, remember they had like the Captain America show and everything like that?
Right. And that was
worked.
That was fantastic. That was beautifully put. They touched on the reason why and that was fantastic.
Well, let's be honest. In real time, let's say hypothetically speaking that was a real thing. Let's all be honest. The world was not ready for a black Captain America during that time.
Yeah, during that
Right.
time.
I mean, we're talking about a time where it was all white. Right. This was pre Jackie Robinson. So this was still pre.
I think
this was all white baseball.
40 like. I want to say like maybe 46 was really when I think Captain America started to pump out. It was I think it was maybe one-offs during like the war itself, but then really after he became a solidified
So
character.
society-wise, if we were to, let's say this was in real life, society was not ready for a black Captain America. However, we don't live in that society anymore. We are in 2024. We're, this is a very diverse country. When you go and watch the Olympics, the Russians are all Russians. The Japanese are all Japanese.
Yep.
The American team, white guy, Spanish guy, black girl, trans. I mean, we're so diverse.
Yeah.
So a black Captain America easily would be accepted.
It wouldn't be far-fetched.
So why not put that effort into good storytelling? Take existing characters like Steel from the DC Universe, which is basically Black Iron Man, John Henry Irons. I personally love that storyline, Louise Simonson, such an amazing writer. That story arc would be, in my personal opinion, phenomenal. But, this all kind of tied into the only genre that has not been touched by the PC world and has actually addressed all of these issues years ago and no one talks about it.
And exactly, nobody talks about it.
And what genre is that?
Horror movies.
Horror.
Horror.
Yeah, movies, TV.
Let's spit out some examples.
Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp.
Alert.
Now, for people who don't know Sleepaway Camp, just say it. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
This movie came out 40 years ago. Shut up.
1980, I want to say, no?
I think it was 83, wasn't it? 82, somewhere around there?
Let me check. 1 second, everyone.
Sometime in the 80s.
I mean, as he looks that up, we can't forget like Buffalo Bill.
1983.
Buffalo
That's
Bill.
probably the
Was
most,
83, right?
I think, widely known, quotable scene of something of that nature.
So what we're talking about right now is that horror is one of those genres that Hollywood has considered almost like lowbrow. Like they don't even notice them. They never won any Academy Awards.
They'll never get recognized for any of the performances. For
none of that.
Shit.
Right.
So is it a coincidence that horror is the only genre that's so under the radar that it hasn't been touched by Hollywood producers and these agendas of like, oh no, you have to make Freddy Krueger black. You have to make Michael Myers trans. You have to do this. No, you just let us do some good storytelling and we'll handle the rest. Sleepaway Camp, the big reveal was
it's a
that
boy.
the main killer was a hermaphrodite.
Yeah.
Hermaphrodite, yeah.
And you had mentioned Buffalo Bill.
And then also
Silence of the Lambs.
Well, I also think too, like, I think the horror genre has gotten the ability to kind of act freely within its own, genre is because of almost I think the assumption that like being trans or being different is like scary. So that's like okay within that genre. When really it works in the benefit to the progression of the genre itself because, I think, censors stay away because they're like, oh yeah, of course that's scary, that's different or whatever. But in reality, it's giving good representation to diversity.
Right.
And
totally
kind of
agree.
having like a reverse... It's almost like it's camouflage to PC and therefore sprouting really good examples of strong characters and diversity amongst.
I completely agree.
characters.
Even the old classic
Psycho.
movie maniacs, even before them, if you really look at them, the classics, I'm talking about Dracula.
well,
Dracula was written and advertised as the greatest love story ever told.
And
But
then you go see it.
you almost don't even pay attention to the fact that Dracula himself is not even human, he's a creature. But you're already just accepting that he and...
So how many people like unknowingly accept that this is a bestiality story? Twilight, you know, and not saying that, you know, I feel like a lot of like people get alarmed when you say that word, bestiality.
Frankenstein's monster.
But Frankenstein's
Wolfman.
monster, I mean, any sort of anthropomorphic character in any sort of media, which is extreme, Disney, you know what I mean? Think about how the primal representations of how people think about things and interpret and project their expressions still have those roots that everyone, the diversity is still represented, which is just so filtered into like, no, this is Mickey Mouse, this is a giant rat, you know what I mean? And you have to remember, I think, that what things really, really are.
Right.
You know?
So even as old as them, you know, these characters were freaks, were monsters, were outcasts, but it was done so earnestly, and the writing was so intelligent, and the acting, you know, Bela Lugosi, and I always forget his name, but the guy who played as Phantom of the Opera. But you know who I'm talking about. These were, you know, amazing characters, and no one really cared, really, if they were gay, if they were white, if they were black.
You're right. You didn't come out. You've never come out.
It was
of a horror
place
movie
where
going,
freaks and monsters could be safe.
You know, that one person was gay, or that one
all
person
about
was
the
black.
storytelling.
Like, right? Like
Everyone bleeds
went
red.
in as a horror movie.
And horror
Everyone
movies prove that.
bleeds red.
Horror movies always prove that.
That was good.
Well, not all horror movies, and I have to use the example Psycho. That was chocolate syrup.
Right.
Okay,
But that also
speaking of
touches,
Psycho,
that also touches on the fact of cross-dressing,
Cross-dressing and-
as well
right, he was
as
pretending to be his mom, but
smothering,
doesn't change the
'cause-
fact that it's
yeah.
a man just
as a woman.
It
No one
addresses
cared.
an edible complex
no
that
public
really
outcry.
hasn't been focused on since like Greek epics. You know
Right.
what I mean? You don't get that
'Cause-
kind of
yeah.
subject matter unless you go to the horror genre.
Right, and so horror basically has, from the very beginning,
with the classic monsters.
has been more progressive than all this crap that they're trying to force down your throats now.
With
I give-
little
I'm
to
gonna-
no involvement from producers.
Right.
I've
And
heard
I
more
can
about
even
myself
rattle
from
off-
Frankenstein than
rattle off-
Velma. To be
I can
honest.
even rattle off a couple examples. One, I'll give you 3 examples right now of certain things the horror movies did. Let's go to the original Night of the Living Dead.
Perfect example.
First survivor. Who was the only survivor? A black man.
Oh, well, he actually died.
He did, yes, he does
But
lie, but that
what
was
I
that
loved
was
about
that
that
was a
movie-
reflection on like the.
But that's
human-
when Kubrick decided to switch the script on that and make that the pigeonhole where the black guy dies first.
Wait, who did that?
Kubrick. In The Shining, the first person to die in that movie was Mr. Halloran when he comes to go visit Danny and Wendy,
and Jack, yeah.
and he gets axed in the gut. And that
Right.
started the whole entire pigeonhole. After that movie, if there was a black guy in the film, he was the first one to go.
See, now, what's crazy is what Lou's talking about, Night of the Living Dead, that very first one, doesn't just introduce... I mean, this hits on all different levels.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't just introduce a black man living all the way to the end. It also introduces, during a time where I think it was only Sidney Poitier that was only accepted as, you know, a lead, you know, character, but this
Lead
black
black
actor
right.
was the lead actor
Yes.
in a film, and leave it up to a horror movie to allow that to happen. And not only that, but if you watch the movie, he slaps the shit out of a white woman during that film.
Yeah, Dwayne Jones.
And no one says anything.
Yep.
Because again, it's camouflaged by such good writing, by the situation. It doesn't matter that it's a white woman and a black man. It's so good. You're absolutely right.
And then
Night of the Living Dead was very progressive.
2 other examples. I'll go to the 3rd movie in the series before the 2nd one, since we're on the you know, with the race. Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Kincaid lives. Black guy makes it to the next movie, makes it to the 4th movie.
Oh.
Dream Master.
Yeah.
And that breaks the
Kincaid lives.
stigma that all
And
the
that broke.
movies set
Right.
up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Another movie. I mean, everybody, technically dies at the end because of bomb, but another one who, Return of the Living Dead. one of the black punk rockers makes it to the very end.
Yeah.
Right.
There's,
You know what that
there's
makes me
another
think
movie
of
for
too? You know how like there's so many like I guess racial stigmas in like cult like slasher films and stuff like that have developed, which you know is part of just like that the tropes of the genre. But at the same time, it makes me think of like the Wayne brothers and like Scary Movie and how like you know being able to
They're comedies,
yeah,
but
right.
they're considered comedy horrors.
Right, to take
Right.
back the stigma that's been built up, but also own it in a way that makes. I
Right.
mean, because then you have white chicks too, which is it's,
Where they're doing reverse blackface.
right reverse blackface and cross dressing.
And
Another very
cross-dressing.
progressive, you know, thing that was presented in such a way where everyone ate it up. You know what I mean? Where today I feel like there would be campaigns, there would be Facebook groups, there would be Bill O'Reilly type fighting against.
Well, it doesn't
Well,
even
as
just
you-
with
things
racial
like
stuff.
that.
Well, yeah, as you bring that up with the Wayne brothers, now they're also making a new scary movie for today's generation
Oh,
of horror
right, they
movies,
are, yeah,
and the
coming
Wayne
out
brothers
with
are
a
doing it. So
I
that's
am
where it's going to be like
Very
yeah.
curious to see.
I'm
Yeah.
excited because they said that they're going to go all out,
I
balls to the walls with
personally
this.
would appreciate it, and I hope that they do this. And if it's done, and I don't even care if it's successful. I only care about if it's a good movie, entertaining.
Yeah.
That's what I care about. But if they push the envelope that they offend so many people, and they literally turn around and say, "We don't give a shit. It's a movie. It's a comedy movie. Relax." And I hope other people pick up on that.
Yeah,
I
bring that
don't
back.
think that.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. If you are openly making movies like The Birth of a Nation, which was basically a movie glorifying the KKK,
Right.
you should be canceled.
You're,
That's horrible.
you're also
Yeah.
missing the biggest movie that would be absolutely slandered to high hell in this day and age, Blazing Saddles. If anyone were to ever touch that movie in the remake sense,
Right.
what are you doing?
That's a comedy.
Exactly. It's a comedy
That's based
that
off
we're
of
not here trying to promote hate.
You can still watch it on
Yeah.
Netflix.
We're not trying to show hate with this.
Right, they're not
we're just
pushing
trying
some sort of weird agenda.
We're just trying to here to say fuck everyone.
Right.
We're just trying to have a good laugh out there.
And I don't think it stops at race. It's funny that you mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street Part
I
3.
was just about to say
Nightmare on Elm Street Part
Part
2
2. That was my next
was
example.
considered the gay
The
nightmare.
gay nightmare.
There's so much gay innuendo in that movie.
And the lead
it was
character is
done
actually gay in real life.
So
Yeah.
If you rewatch that movie, his door says no girls allowed. His closet, when he opens it up, there's games called Probe. He goes and what is it? His gym teacher is literally at a gay bar with like leather outfits and whatever whatnots, and he dies in the shower, getting whipped in his naked ass with a towel. There's balls, literally balls bouncing all over the place, and then at the end it was the boy that got saved by the girl. This was so gay.
Yeah.
But it was done so clever.
Yes.
That I didn't even realize it was gay. I'm telling you right
well,
now,
that's
I saw that movie
Right.
when I was probably 12 years old. I didn't know how gay it was until like 2 years ago.
Well, that's the notions of horror movies. They don't have to be so in your face about everything.
Right.
It's just there because it's everyday life.
Right.
There's gonna be gay. There's gonna be this. There's gonna
Right,
be that.
exactly.
That's like the kind of encompassing thing about the horror genre, because you the expectation that things are going to be strange to the point where it's normal,
Right.
and I think that's the glory of it, really.
What does that say about us as a society?
That we don't expect things to be strange. We want to be secure. We want to know what to expect. We want to be, it's a monument to insecurity.
And that's just not what horror is about.
And,
No.
and horror is a direct goal is to do exactly that, make you uncomfortable. And you go in there expecting that. There's a need in human society to be exposed to what makes
You know
us
what's so
uncomfortable.
weird about that?
You
The
know?
things that most people would be uncomfortable now. I watched the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and yes, it's not scary, but it's still considered horror. It's comedy horror. There was bisexual stuff, trans
Transgender.
stuff.
let's talk about modern vampires.
And
then,
I was
being
not uncomfortable
always-
at all.
Out of all
And
At all. I
Androgynous
just
characters,
loved the movie.
Rocky Horror is probably got to be the biggest cult movie
Yeah.
ever.
And they have renditions 24/7. Like in the city, if you get right out of Penn, there's a whole ass amphitheater that does live shows on the hour.
Listen, I'm going to tell you right now.
There's a demand
I
for it.
saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show for the first time when I was 16 years old.
Jealous.
And it didn't curve my spine. It didn't rot my soul.
Yeah, it didn't change your agenda.
Yeah, it was just an entertaining movie because I only saw it as an entertaining movie.
Exactly.
Well,
It was only when someone else introduced the notion of, oh, well, this is pushing some sort of gay agenda, blah, blah, blah. Did you make that, you planted that in my head. Before that, I just saw a really cool movie.
Well, it was also the whole thing with how they pigeonholed Tim Burton for the longest time. That this man was like playing with dolls to make his movies, and it's just like, why am I going to watch a movie where a guy's doing this? And then you look at Nightmare Before Christmas and this stop motion movie that still to this day is one of my favorites. But seeing how so many people looked at this guy like he's just weird that he's trying to make something like this. But
hot take though, Jack is not genuinely interested in Sally.
I don't know. Jack wants to live the asexual life.
You think so?
It's not his focus.
He's got a bone to pick.
It's not his
Oh, it's
focus.
also
I
it's
see
also
what
in
you
kids.
did there.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying.
Choo-choo.
I think the romance wasn't even made a focal point, and I think one of the biggest things that stands out modernly about Night Before Christmas is the romance focal point. Like the most.
Because Sally's so over the top in love with him. But he's like, yeah.
But it's also a
hey.
kids' movie, so... you can't
Okay,
have sex
most
in it.
kids' movies also are very subliminal at that time in the early 90s to early 2000s.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot that if we watch it now, we'd be like,
Like Timon and Pumbaa.
Huh?
Talk about it?
They're just too...
Ice Age, a sloth and a mammoth. How's that really fitting?
Well, listen. If you really want to look at stuff like that, I remember
SpongeBob.
checking it out. There was a commercial for the Superman TV show where they had, I'm telling you right now, this is so true, a meeting where they couldn't have Lois Lane, part of the TV show,
Right.
with
Lois and Clark? With,
no, I'm talking about the '80s one with oh god, not Christopher Reeve, before him. I can't believe I forgot his
George
name.
Reeves.
George Reeves. So they had these commercials for like Cocoa Puffs, something like that, some sort of cereal. Yeah, with Sugar Smacks. Let's just whatever cereal. Sugar Frosted Flakes. Let's just go right there. Right?
Tit.
They had the man George Reeves and the actor Perry White enjoying cereal together at one of their houses, and they told the actress Lois Lane, because she was like, well, why can't I? And they was like, well, we can't have a commercial where you and Clark are at the breakfast table. That insinuates that you two banged the night before. But it was totally fine to have Clark Kent and Perry White.
Two men in a hot tub, 4 feet
Right.
apart.
Think about that for a
not
moment.
kidding.
Society during that time was trying to protect, I guess, the children from the image of an unwed man and a woman waking up in the morning together enjoying breakfast. But they had no problem with two grown men enjoying breakfast.
You know what's interesting, and this is kind of more
we can't
of a, more of
always
a
trust
history thing.
what people think is good for society.
In
Right.
medieval, and this is like a little bit of a history side quest thing, but in medieval times, having a squire, having a little young guy following you around doing stuff for you. If you look into some of the more recent discoveries about the nature between the the relationship between the knight and his squire, he served his knight. You know what I mean? There are accounts about that, and I think that throughout the evolution of artwork and portrayals in media, there is definitely an underlying weird almost protection of the idea of this
Right.
young man to older man synergy that can be viewed in a lot of different ways. And I feel like it's been very slyly fed to us, but at the same time, it is also a representation of the
Right.
of the diversity of relationships between people.
See,
Batman and Robin even can get a little,
Right.
why does he make him run around in little shorts?
Right. But in that same
Right,
commercial,
yeah.
when I saw that commercial when I was very young, I only thought of Sugar Frosted Flakes.
right.
The commercial did what it was supposed
Which
to do.
makes you ask the question,
it wasn't
who's it
until
for?
years later
The subliminal message.
that
of it.
someone put it in my head. Well, those are two guys waking up together. So again, it's like, listen, why don't you just let things be things instead of trying to push some sort of weird agenda?
Exactly.
I-
You don't need to force a message that doesn't need to be there.
Right. I don't, it's so funny because horror really does push that of just, hey, listen, we're just trying to tell good stories.
Because always one of my favorite examples of like the last movie that did it right to the point where now it's even in the TV series, Chucky.
That is
Like Bride of
great
Chucky.
example.
Yeah.
Bride of Chucky.
Oh,
then
my
he had the
God.
child. In the TV series, he literally goes up to Chucky. I'm not man or woman. I don't care. I still love you.
right.
And at the end of the day,
In fact, that's the main character.
Yeah.
Is a
That
gay,
was
and this is
is a
coming.
gay kid himself.
Non-binary, yeah.
And this is coming from a serial murderer that literally just wants to kill and get a human body again. But at the end of the day, he still knows morals, even though he's bloodthirsty.
The actor's daughter herself dresses up and pretends to be him when he was younger.
Yes. Yep.
None of this means
Yeah.
anything to me
Exactly.
because it's just a fun show.
Yeah.
But so many people, like, if you were to look at that from like the outside perspective, oh, it's promoting this, it's promoting hate on this. It's like,
No.
where's
He's-
their
At
hate?
the end of the day, he could argue he's a doll. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's got a
Also-
slope down there. I'd be
Also,
confused too.
What, Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky came... When
Yeah,
did
a year
Seed
apart.
Seed of Chucky was what, late 90s?
2008.
Right? Seed of Chucky was 2008?
I want to
I
say.
thought that was still in the 90s.
No, that was not in the 90s, I don't think.
No, he's right.
2004.
Oh, 2004.
But even
Okay.
still, that's at a point where,
But
like,
that was still way before
All
all this
this-
crap
yeah,
was
'cause
getting pushed.
I was in,
non-binary.
what was it, 2004, so I was in, so roughly 4th or 5th grade, because my math don't want to work right now. But regardless, I remember going through middle school, high school, none of this was like the prevalent news. Yet this, yes, it was still happening in the world, but
Right.
it wasn't in your face with everything in the world.
Right.
Where now if I say this, oh, I need a safe space. And I'm not trying to pigeonhole saying safe space aren't a needed thing for some, but when you take it to the degree of, I can't say a certain thing because I know that person's in a room, makes me feel like now I'm feeling like I'm the outcast because my vocabulary has to shift around you.
Listen, if you're being a dick, if you're outwardly preaching hate, or going after somebody or doing something to them based on their race, skin color, sexual orientation, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
But if you
100%.
literally just have some dumb opinion about some dumb thing that you just, as an American, you have the right to voice your opinion. Just like how somebody else has the right to disagree with said opinion. That's
Right.
what living in a free country
Do you think
means.
this problem, I mean, not really a problem, but this situation exists because, I mean, is it an international kind of thing, or is it really much so like a contemporary and American issue?
I honestly feel it is an American issue.
Yeah.
It is, I think, a bigger issue here, but yes, it definitely, especially England, I would say, a spot, Australia.
Yeah.
It's
Like
big there,
certain
too.
UK areas are definitely in the
But-
prevalent nation of it.
But
Well,
America
because
is
they don't make it a
definitely
big-
the...
But no,
deal
but
like
America
America
makes it
does.
where
Right.
everyone has to be inclusive, and this is where I'm
Every-
so
all right,
like.
so-
But
well,
think, but
real
think about
fast.
that. It's the mindset of generational individuality and then having to be so diverse. And then being like, why can't I feel connected at that point? Because you've been fed that, you know, you're who you are, you have to be who you are, believe what you want to believe, take it to your grave, even if it means you can't connect with other people. And we're here at a deficit now with a lack of communication and a shit ton of individuality, and we can't mend the two. And I think that we suffer from that in a creative, you know, expense.
I think representation of all races and all sexual orientations are important because the ticket holders are diverse. You know, but at the same time too, if you are making a TV show or a movie with a certain whatever in mind, and you're not outwardly trying to offend anybody, you're just trying to make something good, and then next thing you know, a producer, the people with the money, the studio, says to you, you can't make this because it doesn't include these people. I don't think that's okay.
Neither do I.
Oh, stuff like that.
Because
You should be given a choice to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe you want to make this one character this. Maybe you want to blah blah. But don't force it. Like if you don't do what I tell you to do, then your movie's not being made.
Well, because I use the whole example in life is like we're so stuck in the generation nowadays is the participation trophy syndrome.
Yep.
Everyone wins. Even if you don't win a single game that whole year, you're still gonna get a trophy at the end of the day.
Right.
What does that teach us?
I
That
think-
even if we do nothing, we're gonna still win. But if we do everything, we're gonna still win.
I think horror movies, that genre stands alone.
Yeah.
And I think and this is just my opinion, it's because it's not in the mainstream.
Yeah.
I've been seeing a rise. I'll be honest with you, I had no interest in watching Terrifier. Had no interest because I was just kind of just over those type of films. And then Luke was the one that put me onto it.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw it, and I was like, wow.
So
Yeah.
No
fucks given at
Right.
all.
I was like, that's awesome. I want to see horror movies as an escape from just life.
A good term is unapologetic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just because it's when you're a consumer making art for consumers, it leads out like, you know, new substance and to be able to be like, you know, I'm just gonna create and just express and then do what you want with it, to be what it may, and to be able to put the responsibility of the consumer to feel whatever they want to feel about the content rather than, you know, reflecting it back on the creator, being like, I don't understand this. This offends me. I can't deal with these kind of ideas. It's not on the producers. You know, it's not their fault to do that. It's not their responsibility. It's on the responsibility of the consumer to decide what it means to them.
Right, but
not the
now
other way around.
There's someone else that we haven't even spoken about in the horror genre that is friggin' phenomenal. Peel.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Oh my gosh!
But
have you seen his horror movies?
Yes.
That have like little to no white people in it. And
but when
they are so good.
But that's the thing with him.
He doesn't talk about how like you know, oh, they're African American. No, he's just putting these people in this movie, and the storyline is so good. They don't give a shit if they're white or black.
And the subliminal context as well. Of like all the underlying things that are just right in your face.
What was the name of the movie where
Get Out?
No.
X? Not X.
They?
Oh no. Us.
Us? Oh.
Yeah. No, that to me.
That movie, legitimately, I only saw it maybe like 5 years ago. So I'm 42 right now. So I'm talking about late 30s. I saw it, and I legitimately was up for days because I was actually scared. That movie actually scared me.
With that movie being said, have we all seen it?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I have not seen it.
Do you care about spoilers?
No, it entices me to watch it more, actually.
It was
spoiler?
such an intelligently
spoilers.
made movie.
So, yes?
Yeah, you can say
Spoiler!
Sorry.
Spoiler!
Yeah, big spoilers in this episode. Anyway, so the whole entire scene when she's in the car singing 5 on It with her son and she's snapping, she's off key. And the thing with that is I have a friend that's like a music savant with that stuff. So she was just like, why would the mom be off? This is like her favorite song. So she like predicted, maybe the mom's not who the mom's saying she is. Segue, fast forward into the movie, and she's like, huh?
Right.
But stuff like that, that's where I find the very nuances of it. Then watching Get Out and seeing all the hidden white supremacist symbolism is just like...
Yes.
What you were saying before, how the producer would say you can't put this out unless it includes that. It's kind of a double-edged sword secretly because then it forces people like Peel to do subliminal things in order to get their
right
stuff
there.
Out. Right. And you know it causes.
I would love to know what types of challenges as a black man in that industry had to face making those movies. I would love to know.
Well, my big thing
if
is...
someone wants to leave something in the comments, please, by all means. But all I'm saying is, as a fan of horror, it meant nothing to me personally. I'm a person of color. I'm Puerto Rican. I did not see a race when I saw that movie. I saw
a beautiful story.
Good movie.
So
that was so entertaining.
Like you
it
were
happened
saying,
to be in the horror genre.
Yeah.
Like you were saying with the subliminal stuff, sort of like Get Out, like when what is it? He like beats one of the guys to death with a croquet mallet, a white sport.
The Omega symbol,
right
on the front yard.
And then also in Us, how you're saying about she was off key. You know, during that movie, she's wearing a white shirt, and as long as that movie goes on, she's killing people, and she's getting more red, more and more red.
Yeah, it's progressive, and then it becomes
completely red, and then you find out at the end of the movie, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
So like,
but the one symbolism thing though in Get Out that still was like the biggest fuck you in the world was when the girlfriend's in the bed eating the Fruit Loops, drinking the milk, separating the colors from the whites. was the biggest like symbolism that Jordan Peele wanted to imply there, and I'm like,
I didn't even pick up on
wow, because on my third watch, I never put that 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, yeah, who eats dry cereal and then just drinks a glass of milk? Like I drink dry cereal,
breakfast.
but the one
I
thing
will say this though, I probably am gonna start doing that because I hate eating soggy cereal.
Well, I will give you a great cup. I know we're not sponsored by this company, but if you're listening, VAT19 has a wonderful crunch cup. It has cereal and milk.
VAT19.
I think I'm gonna start doing.
I would just like
I'm gonna put a spoon full of dry cereal in my mouth, and then I'm gonna take a sip of milk. I'm down.
I would just like
I'm
to say
down.
every
I'm doing
morning,
it.
every morning I wake up with the sun coming in the window. I sit down and I use my VAT19 to eat my breakfast. I would just like to say.
But this is the one thing I have to say back to the segue of inclusivity as well as just horror movies doesn't care about your agenda. Freddy Krueger, all the kills. There's been handicapped kids, there's been deaf kids, there's been this, there's been that. He kills everyone because no one child is better than the other.
That's a good point. I think horror allows for diverse characters, but because of fear is such a relatable topic and mortality belongs to everybody, that reminds us that there's something that we can all relate to. Sure. Being scared shitless, wanting not to die, no matter who you are, what you believe in, what color you are, that's a universal belief. And I think that horror does a very good job of bringing all these different parties together and reminding us that we're all human and want to live.
Right. I think it's those things that I guess mainstream Hollywood kind of bats their oh, that's beneath us. In that arena, you could push the envelope and you'll be okay. I remember one story I heard, which makes William Shatner the man to me, was there was the episode where he had a kissing scene with with
Aurora.
Aurora. And
I forget the actress's actual
the
name.
director had said, "You're not allowed to kiss. We're going to kind of pan away," something like that, you know? And basically what ends up happening is William Shatner was upset because they wanted to do that because they didn't want a white man and a black woman kissing. So he told Aurora,
yes,
hey, listen, we're going to go all in. We're going to make out. So then when they did the scene, they straight out made out. The director was like, cut. We got to do that again. And William Shatner was like, nope. They're like, what do you mean? We're like, not doing it. We're not doing another scene. You either use this or you don't use the scene.
Yeah.
Awesome. He was offended by that.
I didn't know the story behind that.
Yeah, because he was so offended that they were like, oh, we can't have a white man kissing a black woman on top of it, blah, blah. And William Shatner was like, fuck that.
He's like, we've made it to space. You think we can at least allow a little bit of this? You know what I mean?
That immediately became I love stories like that.
Well,
and just like Eddie Murphy said in Delirious when he's talking, when he's talking about Star Trek, that William Shatner will just bang anything, green female or green alien.
Right.
But also, without William Shatner, we also would not have Michael Myers.
Right. That is true
but
too.
Now, just to go into the comic books a little bit, I just want people to understand, the subliminal, the power of subliminal messages can be negative, but they can also be positive as well.
Oh, yeah.
To this day, I doubt anybody thinks about it, but I did. Superman and Lois Lane. At the end of the day, we all grew up knowing that those two were a thing, but no one cares to mention that Superman isn't even human. He is an alien from Krypton, mating with a human woman.
That is true. But again, nobody thinks about it because he
looks... But subliminally, you are teaching kids that it doesn't matter what you are,
or where you come from.
Correct.
Right.
That's Superman's whole ish, man. He's an adopted, immigrant.
And even in a lesser, popularity, sorry, but Vision and Wanda is not a new thing.
Yeah.
Vision and Wanda being together was all the way back in the 70s and 80s. At the end of the day, Vision is an android and Wanda's a mutant. Doesn't matter. Love is love. You are teaching kids through comics that love is love and race, gender, none of that matters.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Well, what would happen with Iron Man? Wasn't there a wedding in the Marvel universe that was like a guy marriage, like two men got married, wasn't it? Or two women, wasn't there like a?
If there was, it's not the first time.
Yeah.
North Star from what is it, Alpha Flight?
Yep.
Has been gay for years. I'm like, come on, guys. Like,
but that's where I find like all indie studios as well as like the horror studios can get away with like these liberties. Like if we're gonna bring up like tech and human relationship, look at Her with Joaquin Phoenix. He fell in love with Siri because this was a basically sentient voice that loved him unconditionally and answered all of his unknown questions. Sure, there's the horror aspect of Ex Machina, where it's like the future dystopia where all machines are procreating with men. But at the same time, why can't we switch that script and make it a male machine with a woman?
and of course, going back to the horror stuff, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
What was going on with that?
So, Leatherface is based loosely off of Ed Gein, who was a necrophile. He would dig up specifically women bodies and use their parts to make skin suits. When they finally arrested him, he was the one who had like lamps and different
Nipple belts.
nipple belts. But he had a skin
I didn't know
suit
that.
that he would wear. It had breasts on it, and he would wear this around his house in like a nightgown and basically pretend to be a woman. And Leatherface has a lot of problems with identity right from the start, with the whole situation with his family. Whatever movie you're watching, his origin may be different, but he wants to wear other people's faces. Sometimes it's men, but sometimes it's women, but it just stands for a very, real telling of struggles with identity leading to a lot of hardship. Because even Leatherface is misunderstood at the very base of it. He's not necessarily a cold-hearted killer out the gate.
I guess he would consider mentally handicapped, mentally
In
disabled,
a sense,
unstable.
just mentally like stunted in a sense. Because finding out identity at a young age is how you can figure out, I want to play with action figures.
He's
I want to play with Barbies.
Perpetually in that
He never
age.
got to have an experience where he could find himself just because of upbringing. And that's
Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
A deformed child that got bullied and drowned.
With an edible complex.
He was a victim.
Yeah, he was a victim at the end of the day that wanted to get revenge on the people that killed him. They took away his whole life. And that's where the weird statement comes into my brain, is always watching the horror movie and rooting for the killer at sometimes. Because I always loved the movie Scream. The reason I like Scream is it's a basic nature thing that could happen amongst anyone. You could trust someone with your whole entire life, but they could stab you right in the face.
Yeah.
I think we're all collectively saying the same thing, that horror has been flying under the radar from popular Hollywood, that they're able to address and say their stories and hide these things and not have to be affected by producers walking in there like, let's say, multi-million-dollar movie that's coming out of Disney, Marvel. You can't do this, you have to do this because it's my money.
Right.
Horror doesn't have that problem.
Because they've been doing it since the beginning.
It almost defines the genre.
They have been doing it from the beginning. And
'Cause-
honestly, they're masters at it.
Like Twilight itself, like that. I mean,
It's rough if you think
for a
about it,
lot of
especially how it ended.
contemporary
viewers.
I mean, you think
I-
about it. Like, there's so many controversial parts of these really, really famous horror things that are widely seen. And
Well,
accepted.
Twilight's not really horror, but
To some degree.
It's a romance horror.
well, listen, Twilight is really listen. If the name of the book's what? Twilight, New
Moon, Eclipse.
Yeah, let me tell you, that's not vampires. That's werewolves. All right.
No, they're changeless, not werewolves.
But no, like
They're
as you were just,
shapeshifting.
But the fact of having two dualities of an identity and still being a major player in a plot line is almost a mainstay. That happens all the time, and that's really
Right, whereas in Twilight did such a good job masking certain things. Let's be honest. At the end of that series, there's no other way to say it. Who was the werewolf guy? Jacob.
and printing
Imprinted
on
himself onto a baby.
Yeah.
What was it?
Because let's be honest.
I couldn't get Bella, so I'm taking your daughter.
That's magical. That's magical grooming.
Yeah.
Because by the end of that, they showed the future where he's now sexually with her.
Yeah.
I remember when you were
Guys,
just 2
that
months
is a
old.
very uncomfortable.
Isn't there a
so-
saying about wolves in general?
I,
You know?
I gotta say, I talked about like pushing the envelope earlier in certain movies, like how you talk about like Terrifier, like they don't give a fuck, this and that. So I don't know. Have you guys watched the recent episode of House of the Dragon?
No.
Oh, is that Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
No. The last
second
season of Game of Thrones destroyed me to the
Sec-
point where I never
sec-
watched any of
second season of House of the Dragon, first episode.
Is it good? Is it bad?
Oh my god, it's so good.
It's good.
At the end, now spoiler alert.
For the third time.
At the end of the episode, all right, it's just like two families, two factions of the families are fighting against each other. So it is family against family. Okay. To give you context, last season, one of
House of Dragon.
Yeah, House of the Dragon, where going for the throne, her son was killed. In this episode, she's mourning and she wants revenge and she wants one of their children killed. So, let's just say two,
Lovely gentleman.
yeah, get hired to kill actually a specific person, but they decided to go a little darker and let's say kill like a 4-year-old, and you hear like the sound effects
Oh, the physicality.
of
That'd be pretty rough.
of them
Infanticide.
cutting the kid's head off.
Oh.
Like you hear, you don't see it,
Listen, I'm not.
but
gonna
you
lie, that
hear
is
it,
not
and I'm not gonna
something
lie. I'm not gonna lie.
that I desire.
What is that
My
trying to
mouth was
say?
agape for a couple of minutes after that.
My
I'm like, did that
son-
just happen?
My son is literally 4 years old.
I'm
right now.
like, did
This is
that
not something I
just
think I want to see.
happen? I was just like, wow, talking about pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
But like now, here's the thing. They did that to push the envelope as shock value. Now, I will mention something that happened years prior that no one talks about, is that we had Freddy Krueger pajamas. Freddy Krueger stuffed animals.
I still have underwear
for
from him.
kids. Freddy Krueger
let me tell you something.
underwear for kids. But Freddy Krueger
Is
was
a
a
child
pedophile
molester, yes.
child molester.
Well, let me.
But everything was
America!
right, but everything was so fun that they just ignored it.
Well, I'll bring my big pigeonhole, like short and sweet notion of it. Is, as I was talking to all of you guys about this, is like clowns.
Right,
When the
clowns.
fuck did they become scary? And then you look at the whole entire aspect that me and Joel were discussing is John Wayne Gacy.
I was just about to say, I'm pretty sure John.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you have a
Yeah.
real life example,
But
that
when
it
you-
can be logically possible, it becomes
Now we can
accessible.
feed into that fear
Right,
where it's just
yeah.
like, this is someone that's supposed to bring joy to our kids, not belittle and do heinous acts to our children.
Killer clowns from outer space.
it's like a modern evolution
Great video
of
game
like the paid piper, you know.
I mean,
Yeah.
just to dabble a little bit on wrestling.
Oh.
During
Doink!
during the 1990s, the early
Yeah.
1990s, WWF wrestling, I do not care who says otherwise, was borderline unwatchable. The gimmick era was total garbage.
Come on, dude,
But
love.
there was one character that I used to love watching, and that was Doink the Clown.
Yeah.
He would walk in there and do funny
Doink.
stuff, but he could wrestle his freaking out. Like, he was technically sound. He was solid. That man could
Yeah.
wrestle. But then he was so sick and twisted and sadistic.
Yeah.
He worked. He worked.
But I'm also just gonna throw a whole 180 into the whole realm of horror that also makes it so enticing for people, is it also touches on mental health.
Oh, God.
There's so
very
much
much.
representation
None of
of
us even talked about
yeah,
that. Yeah.
Right.
depression, multi-personality, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr.
Norman
Hyde,
Bates.
Right, yeah.
I know there's a more
Yes.
scientific term. It's
There's-
not
yes.
called split personality disorder. It's something
smothering, all that type of shit,
else. Right.
all gets heavily represented. Where like,
Schizophrenia.
yeah, schizophrenia,
Yeah.
Schizophrenia,
Right,
edible
yes.
complexes, complex relationships,
Suicide.
you know, suicide.
Like Oedipus complex. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But that
That is
whole
a huge
entire
thing.
notion of the beast is, I'm a huge fan of horror movies, and I'm a depressed kid, but also I look at the whole entire group of my friends. We're not all chipper and ready to go about our days. We watch horror movies because one, it's
Oh,
not
God,
even
what's the Santa Claus episode, the movie?
Krampus.
No. Way before that. The old,
Black
old
Christmas?
Silent Night, Deadly Night.
That one.
Yeah.
Holy balls.
Not a spoiler alert, but keep an eye out for Terrifier 3 because it's heavily inspired.
I'm just saying, here's a movie where this poor little boy watches his parents getting murdered and
by Santa Claus.
Then gets heavily abused, and then is so severely mentally traumatized by Christmas that he just goes on a mass murdering spree.
Garbage Day!
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But like all that aspects, yeah. And then taking the
mental
whole
instability, you're totally freaking right.
And that's what I love how Jordan Peele some of the aspects that he dives into with that, where so much of it is just, pardon the wording, but whitewashed, where we've seen so many of us white folk being, they're depressed. Is it just white people that are depressed? No, we have all different aspects of race that feature depression, anxiety, and all of these ideations in a whole different ballgame, but we never see it through those eyes because no one ever tackles that. Then we have this come out.
Right.
Listen, I personally, I see, conservatives, I see liberals, I see everyone pushing an agenda. CNN News is just as bad as Fox, in my personal opinion. Everyone's
all news is just the same script, different wording.
The reason why I say this is because I specifically go to video games, comic books, the cinema, horror, to escape reality, at least for a little while, and be entertained. I don't need to watch now in my movies the same agenda that's being pushed out on the street.
Right.
Horror.
That's what makes
Horror's
The Boys.
The last place.
That's what makes The Boys such a great series, I think, right now. And then things like things that are able to address contemporary issues still within like a classic storyline.
Right. Well, listen, nothing against The Boys, but one of the reasons why I couldn't watch it anymore was because they kept on. Because I'm a big fan of the comic book. I love The Boys comic book. Same. But in the show, they really pushed a lot of the crazy stuff that's happening in the streets now.
Right.
And I wanted to escape that.
Yeah, that's fair.
And The Boys, I wanted to watch it because I was a fan of the comic book, and now I'm watching The Boys, and there's this whole subplot, The Deep, and the whole Me Too movement connected to this and this and this, and I'm like, that wasn't in a comic book. That's happening in the street. I want to escape that.
Yeah. So you want to have media that takes you out of reality.
Would you say that The Boys is a prime example of one of these projects that where maybe a producer did step in, or that maybe there was, celebrate as an idea that we have to be, woke and contemporary and to be relevant as a TV show?
I mean, it could, or one could even spin it and say, if the scene where Starlight, that's her name, that scene was not with her in the comic book with The Deep. That scene was her getting gang raped by 4 other people, including A-Train and
Black Noir.
No, the main guy.
Oh, Homelander.
Homelander.
Yeah.
She was legit gang raped. I do not have a urge to see that on a big screen. So, yes, I don't mind them changing that completely and just making it that she was date raped by one person.
That reminds me of It
I was just
right,
about to say.
same thing with those. Yeah, that scene. We'll talk about that. I would rather you talk about that one in a second. Now, I don't care that they changed it because I don't have a desire to see this poor girl getting gang raped.
Right.
You got the message out that she was sexually attacked by this one person, but what I couldn't just is that they kept pushing that narrative for like 7 episodes after.
Right, yeah.
I was just like, okay, I get it. Can we move on? And it was too, when you put too much reality into what I want to escape.
Yeah, too saturated.
It's very easy for me to abandon that.
Like a good example too, the remake of I Spit on Your Grave.
Yeah.
I think I made it maybe halfway through the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't watch it anymore.
No, I
couldn't watch it because it was just too realistic.
Yeah.
Too
about
no. So when the remake really there was no like cuts. There was no pause. There was just
Like
Here, let's have a rape scene for
was
14
just,
minutes.
Yeah, it was just relentlessly raping this girl.
Well, the first one was very much that.
Yeah.
No, but
the
I think
degree,
remake was
degree of the first one, they make it where you're seeing everything. Her bleed, her
Which
cry,
I felt uncomfortable.
her suffer.
And I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest
like,
with you,
I
that
couldn't-
the first one, not the remake,
Yeah.
but the very first one, the rape scenes were too real to me.
And that's
and
where
it made me very uncomfortable.
and that's
now,
where
I
it was
understand
annoying.
why they did that was because the comeuppance that they eventually have, you want these people to die. But the thing is, during that time, the special effects were so shitty that I wasn't satisfied seeing, because I can tell that that's a fake head. No, the rape scene was way too real, and the revenge scenes were way too fake. Whereas in the new one, the rape scenes were not as crazy as the first one, but the way they all died.
I can't even imagine because the remake is the one that I can't sit through.
Did you see the first one?
The original?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. If you can't do the
I
remake,
can't even do the remake.
well,
No, the first one is way worse. The remake took that rape scene and whoosh, dialed it down.
Wow.
But then in the remake, the revenge scenes were way better.
The hedge
I was
clippers,
watching
the
it
lawnmower.
in glee, watching these guys getting fucking murdered one by one. It was so good.
well, I use the opposite spectrum. It's like I prefer the original Funny Games to the remake that they had to do,
Okay, yes.
which was a Dutch horror film where two guys are at this house and this family vacations there and they weren't supposed to be there. So now they're going to torture them one by one, but in the most fucked up of fashions.
Right.
By like having the mom do a striptease for her 12-year-old son.
Was the new one PG-13?
No, that was rated R.
It was rated R?
The original was NC-17.
I was about to say, because the new one really didn't do anything
Yeah,
for me.
exactly. That's why I was just like,
I was like, everyone's fucking going crazy over this.
So it makes me think about what the old, because this is, I've seen probably a few programs in the past few years that really have explicit scenes like that. Aside from shock value, I wonder what like the urge to produce that kind of content is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it makes me think back to kind of like Alien and H.R. Geiger. He thought about like Freudian psychology, where if you created a creature that entered through your mouth, it would be an intrinsic human fear, basically to get like mouth raped by something. And
That's
impregnated.
that movie.
So
was
that
actually
so
very
that's why
sexual,
that's
yeah.
why it hits so hard on like so many human sexuality levels that come down to a primal fear, and it makes me think like, you know, Alien is a movie with a ton of rape in it. You know, face huggers,
Violation.
yeah,
A lot of
the
violation.
entire movie is about biological violation and like the sanctity of what is human and what can be mutated through the means of violation and you know like insemination. You know what I mean? That those things are very heavy topics, and it's almost like what H.R. Geiger did with Alien is so complex and elegant and subliminal, but yet also so raw and in your face.
You
and
don't notice it.
Right.
Yeah, you don't even notice that these people are getting raped basically in their mouth, and
Violent in the worst way.
then men are getting impregnated. It
Yeah.
preys on such primal fears of sanctity and identity that it makes it such a great prolific horror movie.
Yeah, you had mentioned it
and then
before.
and it as well, where it has, you know, a lot of like really big sexual themes. There's a scene in the book where you
Where
know
they-
all them have an orgy.
they're all
Right.
underage and they have, you know,
And
a
they
huge
have-
sexual orgy one by one,
Right.
and like it's seen as a rite of passage. But then you think about like, what is Stephen King trying to accomplish by putting this in? What is that show trying to accomplish by putting so much time into a rape scene? Aside from shock value, I'm
Right.
not getting the same feeling that I get from the intricacy that H.R. Geiger did with Alien.
Right.
So I'm very curious into like what's happening within the creative pool of just like humanity, where these scenes are becoming like, you know, we want to shock people. Like there's an anime Goblin Slayer. I don't know if anyone watched it. Spoiler alert. There, you know, it's about a group of people who go into a dungeon to fight goblins, and the goblins rape the fuck out of everybody. Like it's super graphic. But like after that,
Oh my
like
God.
where do you go from there? What are you trying to say to me?
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Do I feel violated?
Yeah,
Do I
there's
feel
certain-
disgusted?
There's certain things
Yes.
that go.
And
yeah.
you know,
far.
where are we going and what are we saying with violating our viewers? You know,
Where is the line?
but let me
drawn?
just
Right.
piggyback
Right.
off of that whole thing. Is the whole thing with Saw? These are like forbidden fantasies when you really look at it. These are all borderline snuff films because you're just watching someone torture themselves just to live. But if you're going to go through hell, keep going, as Winston Churchill once said, something like that. But we're all looking at this like, what's going through your head to come up with that trap? Like, that's not an average Joe just waking up one day, I got a great idea. Let's throw a whole entire vial of needles and have that girl squirm in there like a worm.
So also, yeah, and also too. So I forget the name of the movie, but I want to say Monica Bellucci, I believe, is in it. There's and I don't know. I don't know if it's the same movie. I think it's the same movie, but she gets the shit beaten out of her by a man. I think she gets raped in the scene too, but it's so realistic when she's getting punched in the face. But
was it like in a metal dungeon?
It was like in a tunnel.
Martyrs.
No, I don't know.
But like
the original Martyrs was
also,
phenomenal.
There's a scene. I don't know if it's the same movie, but there's a movie with some guy that used to do porn.
Oh.
And
Serbian film.
That's
what Serbian film.
Yes.
So
and the one sick
what
bastard.
Did that say?
One sick bastard in that movie is trying to get this guy to do
borderline stuff.
Infant porn.
Oh.
Infant porn, and spoiler alert, at the end ends up fucking his son, and while the brother's fucking his wife.
So when
and this is a movie that someone's like, let's make this.
Yeah, Serbian, right? Exactly. So it's like, talk about shock value.
But
like
it makes me think now that we go over this is like maybe these scenes, maybe these shock value, this content speaks of like how people feel as far as like being creative and being different and being diverse. You know, we want to exemplify vulnerability and express this feeling of being violated because we can't express ourselves openly. We can't, we have to be. We can't offend people. We have to be closeted to a degree where now we feel we feel like we're being raped by the conditioning of our society, which doesn't allow us to be vulnerable anymore.
But now I have to help us ask ourselves a question. You said a key word multiple times: how we feel. Mm-hmm. Now, how we feel, should that be more important than how we should be?
See, and
I don't agree with that.
See, and that is a great question.
You're talking about, like, I'm going to pick this as an example. The four of us hanging out together right now.
Right.
Out of all of us, I have a 4-year-old son, and I love him. He's my life. Hearing that movie, I feel horrified, and I will never watch that movie because I do not have a desire to ever have that feeling. But because I feel horrified, should I then advocate stopping anyone else from watching that movie? I don't agree with that.
Neither
if
do I.
I feel horrible about that movie and I don't want to see that movie, then I don't take my ass to the theater to watch that movie.
Which goes back
but I shouldn't stop you guys from watching it.
Right.
It's up to the consumer to have the responsibility to decide what the content is.
And I feel that that's where the producers are stepping in and saying, very egotistically I might add, if I don't like it, or if I feel that everybody else won't like it, then I'm not going to let it be made.
Right.
Well,
that goes back to the spheres of psychology now. Mm-hmm. Now you have like two identities, because you have, psychology will say you have two identities. You have an inner identity, which is built off of your personal experience, of your reality throughout your life. No one else is going to know what that feels like but you. But then we also, as people, have a social identity, where it's defined by, culture, your country, things that you've grown up with, your religious or your ethnic background. That's all social identity. That's also how you view yourself.
Who I am privately versus who I am publicly.
Exactly. So I think that when it comes to the consumer deciding what it means to them, I think society has a hard time really distinguishing what is attacking that challenges their personal identity and challenges their communal identity.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of people, will join a side or pick a color when a bunch of other people do, but then when they're at home on their couch watching TV, their opinions will be totally different. There's a tertiary personality that exists between the two sides that I think that horror movies are able to tap into.
Mm. See, and also too, Joel, like you were saying about tapping into the psychology thing. So I've always said, so they say when it comes to serial killers, right? there was a study that was done, a bunch of MRIs, and all the MRIs had the same spot in the brain all lit up.
Mm-hmm.
And what it was they were all missing empathy. Serial killers are all missing empathy. Now, empathy is basically feelings. How you feel towards something and everything. So, it's like, so now somebody that doesn't have empathy can decide without feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Without putting their feelings into it. How Rob was saying, I feel like, a certain way about it because I have a 4-year-old son.
Right.
But this other person can make a decision based on
Just in the moment.
or just without feeling. He could base his decision more logically because the feeling is taken out of it.
Like No Country for Old Men is a good example.
So it's kind of like
a famous philosopher that reminds me once said, "True enlightenment comes with the absence of emotion."
Right, exactly. So what is more of the logical answer? Somebody that's making a decision based on feeling, or you're basing your decision on taking that feeling away and basing it more on logic. But at the end of the day, what is the right answer? That's why they even say the borderline between a genius and a psychopath is very thin. If you look at most billionaires in the world,
I think it would depend on your social identity.
they're close to being psychopaths or sociopaths.
You have to be a little crazy in order to be, because think about it. In order for you to do something that is beyond what other people have told you that you are capable of doing,
Right.
you have to be a little crazy.
Well, that's where one of my favorite quotes from Stream always is, movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative. Because someone has come up with that idea.
Right, exactly.
The horror genre has addressed that inner identity more so, where I feel like other media addresses that social identity.
Mm-hmm.
Horror focuses on that inner identity almost all the time, and I think that's very important.
But how we all look at the killer, like they're all universally screwed up individuals, but what makes them lead to said things, like you still don't know Michael Myers what ticked off in his brain to have him kill his sister and then do this.
But that's also what makes
makes
it so appealing and so good, because it's just you don't know why.
Well, like Terrifier. We have no idea what this whole backstory is. It's a mute clown that just wants to mutilate and mutilate and mutilate.
And has supernatural abilities.
Yeah, can be a severed head.
I felt the same way with Saw Part 1, whereas in like, wow, this was cool.
Still one of the best endings.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the best surprise endings.
But then Part 2 happened, and I was like, whoa, that is twisted. He's just getting revenge on a bunch of dicks.
All those movies were filmed like within the span
when
of
Saw started explaining why he was like this, then he became relatable. Because then it was like, wow,
now you have sympathy.
Can I personally say that I would do anything different if that had happened to me? I don't know if I would.
Because that's the big thing about horror movies. They ask the why, and then they understand the why. Right. Then I take the whole thing with like superheroes is the why could be implied, but I'll use like the example of Superman. Why Earth? Sure, it's inhabited by civilization, people, and all that.
Right.
But why Earth? Why not start your own colony somewhere else and build the empire again?
Well, look how we're all talking.
Yeah.
We're all really talking essentially about the same thing, which is horror. The genre of horror has been given the freedom to explore all of this.
Yes.
And society hasn't crumbled. You know, that's awesome.
And that's what makes people so gravitated towards it that I've seen is just like the unknown is the biggest like high that we could always have is trying to understand like ghost stories. Bloody Mary is one of my all-time favorites, but looking into the lore that this was a French woman that killed herself because her husband died overseas and bled out in front of a mirror. And I'm like, as a kid, I just remember, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
I remember a bunch of
Vincent
us
Price.
getting together trying to do that and people running out of the bathroom because we were too afraid to do it.
Vincent Price?
Yeah, House on Haunted Hill,
The
House
Pit?
of Usher.
Oh, the House of Usher? Oh,
yeah.
man.
The original House of Wax, too.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Vincent Price was, at the time, I remember reading about this, was that we now know him as this older, dapper, but when he was younger, his voice, his mannerisms, his face, he was considered incredibly handsome, incredibly charming, and in his movies, he's legitimately killing people.
Yeah, and then the polar opposite, you have Hitchcock.
He grabbed a woman. I'm trying to remember exactly how he said it, but the way he said it almost sounded like music, how he was speaking. He grabbed a woman, he said, I'm going to torture you. Like, for your unfaithfulness to me. Like, he was like, whoa. Vincent Price. We're not talking about 2020. We're not talking about, 1990. We're talking about,
1950, 1960.
50s, 60s.
Right.
So horror really does play with that. Hell, even Reefer Madness, which is stupid as hell,
I'll take...
still allowed them to, be in hey, during that time, comic books weren't allowed to talk about drugs. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Comic books was not allowed to talk about drugs, but horror, you could make a movie called The Trip, where everyone's just fucking tripping out on acid and shit.
Right.
And believe it or not, we'll get away from horror for just a moment. Every comic book pre a certain time had to have the comic book proof of approval. It was a little A, and it had to match certain things.
Right.
No killing, no drugs, you can't even mention it, nothing like that. And Stan Lee wrote a Spider-Man comic about how this kid was on some sort of drug and thought he could fly and stepped off of a building and Spider-Man caught him. And it was something to, go against drugs. And the association was like, oh, it's cool, but we can't post it. He goes, why not? Well, you're talking about drugs. He goes, I'm not talking about advocating drugs. I'm talking it's against drugs. So they're like, well, we can't print it. Stan Lee himself was like, what are they going to do if we do? So he pushed it out anyway. He fought the establishment. And it became such a big deal that it had to rewrite the entire association code to the point where the drug thing, gone. It was gone. That was Stan Lee pushing the establishment.
Yes, sir.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Horror has been doing that for literally decades. They're still doing that today. And I hope it never changes.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things is also how horror just feeds onto all the senses. Because you could see it, but you could also feel it at times from sounds, from colors.
I think that's probably one of the unifying things about, because I don't know if any of the viewers know this, but I'm legally blind. I can watch movies close up on my phone, but a lot of the time I have a very audio experience with movies. And when it comes down to horror movies, a lot of it's visual and implied, but we don't realize how much the score of a movie can make the entire thing. You know what I mean? I was telling Luke earlier today in the original Star Wars movies, when Darth Vader appears, they play a certain note on the piano. But while he does that, he extends his lightsaber, which makes its own sound effect, which changes the chord of the piano to a diminished chord, which makes it even more foreboding. I don't know if this was an intentional thing that they did while making the score for it, but as a blind movie viewer, I guess I would say that I think one of the most relatable things, because if Rob watches a movie and I watch the same movie, we're gonna experience two different movies, but it's the score and the fear and the other senses that really can connect us between two scenes. Right. Because when I watch a scene and I just get the vibe from it, and if that's effective enough to connect me and be able to talk about it with Rob, who actually saw what went on, that's an effective movie. And their ability to cross different ways of perception amongst all people to agree to one thing, that's scary. I think fear is a very unifying thing, and it's the most human thing. I think that's why horror is so universal. You know?
And we also let's face it, we love to have the shit scared out of us. We really
For
do.
you guys, maybe. I've yet to find anything that truly has scared me. It sucks. So comment if you have a movie, but
I will say, when I was a kid,
yes.
I will show you Showgirls.
The movie,
is that the one with the girl from
Saved by the Bell?
Yeah. Then yes, I have.
Yeah.
Wait, Topanga?
And then the one that played the evil guy in the mask.
Yes.
Yes, then I have seen it.
I will say, when I was a kid, and I'm talking 80s. Like I'm like 5 years old. Whatever.
So this was your first horror movie?
No, well, I don't know if it was my first horror movie, but the one horror movie that scared the ever-loving shit out of me when I was a kid was Poltergeist.
Oh, yeah.
Poltergeist scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Let's talk about Spielberg for a
When
second.
they introduced the preacher in Poltergeist 2, because he wasn't in Poltergeist 1.
No.
When they introduced that preacher in Poltergeist 2,
technically,
I was terrified by him.
Oh,
Terrified. He scared the hell out of me.
I was scared of the tree. That thing kept me up.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
the tree. That was part 1.
The
Part
fucking
one,
clown.
guys,
The clown.
Talking about relating to
I had a
primal
tree outside
fears,
my- I
everyone
lived in an
did,
apartment
dude,
building.
and we all hated it.
Yeah.
Fucking okay, so that's
Fuck that tree.
that's the thing about
right in
horror,
its
though.
stupid
Yeah.
fucking bark.
It's able to find these
I'm gonna
universal
cut down the
fears
first fucking
of
tree I
uncertainty
see
and connect
tomorrow
us through
morning.
it.
Yeah.
Because like Rob, like we're different ages. We watched this movie at different times, but yet we both remember a tree in our yard that scared the shit out of us.
Yep,
And
exactly.
that puts us together in the same category.
Yep.
You know,
Oh,
and I think
wait,
that's
wait.
one of the best things about
Well,
it.
But no. You know how you talking about like you experience. You know from Poltergeist. You know there was a tree that scared the shit out of me. You know like Poltergeist fucked up trees for everybody, for all little kids. Now here is one
Worst.
horror movie that really, and I can't even imagine what it was like for people in the fucking 70s when this came out.
The Exorcist.
I wasn't allowed.
Jaws.
Oh, yo,
Fuck
my
bitches
mom,
up.
my mom
for
saw
people
Jaws when
for
it came out. She said she was
years.
hiding under the seat because they'd never seen anything
Anything like
like it before.
that. And
I remember people telling me that
Fuck.
they were afraid to go into a pool. I was like, it's a pool.
can you
Like,
imagine?
there's no sharks in the
Nick.
pool, I promise you.
But in the bathtub, right?
Yeah.
The toilet. They're like, nope.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Like,
That-
talk about universal fear, man.
That's
Fuck.
why I truly wish I could have grown up like when horror movies were at its peak, because like no one can ever redo The Exorcist the way that The Exorcist was done. All the practicality, everything
Right.
about
You know-
the film. People,
Hellraiser.
I've
yeah,
had this conversation with a lot of people. There have been a lot of exorcism style movies, and I'm very surprised that none of them have caught on to what made The Exorcist better than all the other ones. The other ones, like The Exorcism of Emily Rose, couldn't give a shit what happened to her because you did not make me become emotionally attached to her.
yeah,
Whereas in The Exorcist,
builds that whole story.
she was her squeaky little voice, her little button nose.
So happy with her
she
mom in the
wants
basement.
a pony. You know, Reagan. That was
Yeah.
her name, right? We felt she was American Pie. We fell in love with her, and then we gradually started seeing her,
Her
suffer.
decay, pain,
Yes,
everything.
getting tortured, and then we saw her as this disgusting thing. Holy shit balls!
Do you think that's almost like a commentary on like the way that we view America as where we're innocent and we're young, and then like things start to get uglier and uglier, and that's something that maybe
As a 42-year-old man,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
but when I was a kid, all I saw was some fucked up shit. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Whatever they were trying to push, I was like, I don't fucking see
See,
it.
I
I'm
was,
scared out of my mind.
I was
Scared
5.
out of my mind.
fair enough.
I was
fair
5
enough.
watching that movie with a smile on my face, and that's when I knew my parents gave up on the Disney train. But no, like that's where, like for me, like I always looked at horror as the simple factor of you're taking something that's taboo in the nature of the beast, but you're making it so abundant where you should feel uncomfortable. Because, like, yes, watching someone getting their head chopped off, your brain should tell you, I gotta look away. But why are my eyes still glued to that screen? So then that's where, like, as being a photographer for almost 15 years now, that's how I tend to do a lot of my photo work. All my color gradients, all my blacks, my grays, my whites are to the nature of the eye where you want to keep looking at that.
Right.
But there
Right,
could
yeah.
be certain things that, like, when I do my horror
But
photo
look
shoots...
how much horror has
Yeah.
affected all of us.
Exactly.
From different ages, from
Right.
different places. Look how horror has affected us to the point where we question certain things and we look at things with more enlightened eyes and we appreciate other things. Horror did that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because, yes, we could have that escape where, like, I remember friends that would watch a horror movie but have to watch something funny right afterwards. But
Right.
it's just like, why do you need that?
I think that humanity throughout its entire history, and this is just biology, that we are striving to delete the uncertain. We're designed to create things that are recognizable And horror does the exact opposite. It goes to a primal place that brings you back to, like, you know, you like to pretend we're civilized, but when you're shitting your pants, we're all the same.
Right, yeah.
And I think that horror does that great because it always starts out with a diverse cast of people who can be relatable to the audience on different levels, but then at the end of everything, everyone is just happy to be alive, the ones who survive, and like it really brings you back to the primalness that really unites humanity, you know, because I think horror, everything else in the world, like, it's better to be feared than to be respected. And by saying that in this context, I mean that I think most mass media wants to be respected, and that makes it kind of like, you know, don't tell me what to do. I don't really give a... No one likes to be told what to do. I don't want to be told to respect something.
Right.
What's going to get my attention is if it scares the shit out of me. And I'm going to respect that either way. But at least it has more of a voice than trying just to, like, you know, PC everything and everyone says the same thing.
Right.
One
you know,
of
and
my
that's what makes horror
favorite,
effective.
I would probably say not one, but my favorite type of horror is the one that by the end of it, innocence has been completely stripped away.
Yep.
Oh.
You know for a fact that no matter what, happy ending or not, this person is fucked.
Then I got a great movie for you.
Well, let me tell you. John Carpenter, I'll quote him. He said there's two types of stories. He said there's the story of we as a society and evil is out there. You have to fear the people that are not like us. Evil is out in the shadows. Evil is out, you know, in the dark. And then there's the other type of story, which is
The evil.
we are actually
We're
the evil.
the evil.
We're the evil people. And the one movie, and I will say this, and I will defend it till the end of time, the one movie that stands alone as my favorite horror movie of all time was The Mist.
Ooh. Yeah.
Whereas there is essentially evil out there in the mist. You know what I'm saying? But when you watch the movie, they're creatures. They're just being
Well, it's like the movie We Should... We Should Do Something, where they're all locked in the bathroom after a storm, and then basically their personalities start to turn on each other.
But in this particular movie, I'm watching it, and like, yes, I understand that there's monsters in there, but if you really watch the rest of the whole movie as a whole, you step back after rubbing your eyes, and you're just like, well, the monsters are just monsters. A lion eating you is not a monster. A lion is just being a lion.
Right.
Well, these monsters are just being monsters. The real evil
Is inside.
was the people reacting to each other. And then when you are with the father just trying to protect his child, there was that one woman that had children of her own that asked who would come with me, and no one would. And it's like, would you have done that? Would you have gone with her? With knowing that you were as a father trying to protect your child, only to fast forward to you being the person to kill your own
Spoilers.
son because you think that it's, you know, we're all gonna die and I'm gonna prevent him from suffering, so I'm gonna kill him, and then go outside and then be killed by the same monsters, only for the same woman to drive by with her children. If you had actually gone with her.
That's a great point. That, like, the scariest thing is humanity itself. They say the shortest horror story ever.
I got goosebumps just thinking about that movie right now. And I saw that movie like 15 years ago.
I forget what the writer was, but I've heard that the shortest horror story ever written is the last man on Earth is alone in a room, and there's a knock at the door. That's the entire horror story. Because the imagination of humanity in a vacuum is scarier than anything reality could come up with.
Yeah,
and I think that being reminded about that is you know,
like, here, I'll give you a great example of that. Unbreakable.
Unbreakable is a great movie.
Unbreakable. The scene where Bruce Willis is in the train station and he's touching the people and he's getting you know, the visions, and he comes across the vision of the guy that, you know, chained up the kids, killed the wife and everything. But the scariest part is when the guy knocks on the door. And the homeowner comes to the door and he's like...
Yeah, he's like, can I come in?
No, he's like, can I help you? He's like, I really like your house. Can I come in?
The chills, bro. The chills.
Scariest fucking thing
the
ever.
violation of the safety.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
the common theme.
Right.
Yep.
Last man on earth, alone in a room.
Right.
Great movie
But
too.
in that
Knock on
one,
the
that's
door.
the fear of the unknown. With yours, it's the fear of someone, violating. But in the Mist, it's we're all considered good people. And now slowly we're changing into these bad people.
The animosity.
But we're still good people somehow. Think
Or-
about that.
or-
That
or-
man
or you're-
decided not to help that woman
Or
for
you,
good intentions of helping his son, but it turns out to be the bad decision. Wow.
or you actually put it into that situation and you're going back to your primal self and you were pretending to be good the whole time.
Again, these are all questions that we can ask ourselves.
Well,
Right.
All from a horror movie.
We can
Yeah.
put it in different
A horror
contexts,
movie, put that-
without
put that into
society,
us.
without your job, without your government. Like saying these apocalyptic movies, like that's probably why Fallout is really popular right now too.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
after the collapse,
Yeah, I've been watching that. That's
the
good
collapse
shit.
of everything we know. Who are we?
Right.
And I think that's a huge question, especially like in a contemporary setting, because as like a 30-year-old guy who grew up, in New York for my entire life, is like there's a sense of doom, I think, that my generation has, that we want to enjoy our lives now because the future is unpredictable. And I think that, where am I going with it? I think that deciding who you are in a vacuum is very important because we're very pressured.
I think you're very correct.
From all corners, from different influences, politically, socially, religiously, like there's so many discourse communities, and I think horror really poses the question without all that, with
Now,
the
for the
breakdown of
listeners and
society.
viewers, how old are you?
I am 30 years old.
Okay, 30, and I'm 42. So we're talking about a decade difference.
Right.
Whereas in my generation, or else I would like to thank my generation as this is, or at least this is what my generation was taught, the future is what we make it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unsure.
Guy's over here quoting Terminator.
Right, but it is true.
That's Andy's movie. That's a great example.
I was taught that true change
Comes from
starts with you.
Right.
Michael Jackson. You want to make the world a better place? Take a look in the mirror.
And
Make
also
the
take a
change.
look at last
This
episode.
was a lesson, or at least a message, that was given to my generation. And now, Luke, how old are you?
28.
28, so close to
Yeah.
age.
We're the nihilist
46.
generation.
46.
Right.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So now, these younger generations that are in their 20s are basically being taught the world's fucked and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
But
But your feelings are valid.
But
And
there's,
it's safe
there's,
space.
And that's
but
what
there's an
matters.
enlightenment that comes from that in a way, because we're clouded by all these different influences, continuously asking the question, who are you when all this is stripped away, when you're terrified, when you can't trust anything, when there's that knock on the door, who will you be? I think
Right.
we'll have very interesting ramifications on the future and the mentality of different generations, because I think part of the nihilistic tendency of my generation does come from a mixture of things that our predecessors probably, had some sort of hand in. We're a concussive group of consciousness that's going to continually feed on these ideas and evolve. So who will we be in 50 years from now when we've grown up in that Fallout mentality? The world is ending.
Well-
Who are we going to be?
Hopefully, old people still doing this podcast.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. The conversations are important. This is what society is for. We're not worried about running for our lives. We're not worried about finding our next meal. We get to talk about this and become enlightened and progress. And that's
From what I know, none of us have degrees in psychology. Luke does?
Yeah.
You?
Yeah.
You do not.
I do. I was a psychologist for 8 years.
Like on you right now?
Yeah.
What is it?
he's got the
Yeah,
creds,
pull up
man.
his
He's got the creds.
Holy shit, he's showing you right now. Alright, he's got it.
But anyway, kids.
But what I'm saying is
real
that-
fast though.
Right.
As you guys were mentioning on human nature becoming like the biggest evil in all of us is, if any of you are familiar with the Belko experiment.
Okay.
So
Just put a pin in that. My one statement
Okay.
is that all of us, from what I at least thought, we're not doctors, we're not psychiatrists, we're not psychologists, but we're all
okay.
considered very intelligent and how we feel and how we see the world, and it all stems from fucking horror movies?
Yes.
How great is that?
Right.
So now, yes, please.
So for the familiarity of the Belko experiment, let's just say
No idea what that is.
Let's just say I offer all of us right now $1 million, but you have to be the last one alive. What are you going to do? Are you going to start killing one another? Are you going to leave the room? Are you just going to go home? But whoever's the last alive wins that $1 million. So originally, the animosity in the brain, there's going to be people that are going to start killing each other.
Now, say, for example, in that particular experiment, I don't want the $1 million.
You're still on the block, though.
But you're
that
still
means that
up
none
for...
of you guys can get the $1 million unless I'm dead.
Exactly.
So now what I have to do is I have to kill in the sense of defending myself.
Mm-hmm. Then you take the...
So I don't have a choice of just walking away, is what you're saying.
In a sense, you do. You just have to do it smart.
There's complacency, and then there is action.
Like the Purge.
Yep.
You have the choice to kill everyone, or you could be the smart one and just go to the mall and just get all the electronics you need and then just make a warehouse.
But in that particular scenario,
but
I'm going to get hunted.
Exactly.
Because you guys want that $1 million.
But at the same time, you could hide, you could do whatever you want. But at the same time, natural causes happen. People could have died from a heart attack. People could die from their own hand. But at the same time...
Because my choice would be I wouldn't want the $1 million because I don't want...
Exactly, you don't want to partake in any of that.
Yeah.
But you could be like, that $1 million could do this, could do that, could do this.
Right, yeah.
Me, I could look at that $1 million, I could piss that around right now.
Right.
But it's just that whole entire thing where if there's that goal and the whole entire slogan is the last to be alive, it's not implied to kill each other. It's not implied that you have to murder him or go after him.
How the Mist is.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
There is no good alternative.
There's no.
What are you willing to sacrifice to gain that agency? You know,
the truth.
God, so
like with the Mist, like you were saying, like let's say all those people, you know, we're gonna help each other. And now it comes to the point where, one of us has to leave to go get supplies. Well, I ain't going to do it. Have that person do it.
Lord of the Flies.
Or that person do it. Or,
Exactly.
And
it's just that pecking order where it's just like, where does it come down where we have to realize that in the Mist instance, if we all went out there together, what's going to happen? Some of us can run that way, some of us can run that way.
Yep. The other experiment, what you did reminded me, I forget the name of it, but it was in the 70s at a college.
Mm-hmm.
When they even made a movie out of it, really good movie actually, where they took a bunch of students and they put them in this room, dorm, whatever, and they made a certain amount of the students prisoners, and they made some of the other students like the officers.
I've
or
heard
like the
about
guards.
this experiment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It only lasted
And
6
it only-
days.
right,
It was supposed to run for 30.
Right, because it got so out of hand.
Really?
With once the people that were the guards, that they got that power, that they went completely overboard. They started to like torture the prisoners, and like these are all students and friends. But
As
now
soon
they're
as
like,
you give them that title,
you gave them that title, you gave them that power.
There's a conspiracy about that experiment. So when they switched places, prisoner to guard, they would, abuse the power terribly.
Right.
They were supposed to be unbiased and not do this. There's a conspiracy to say that the control was tampered with, and that the scientists would say to some of the prisoners and some of the guards, like, do this and see what happens. Because I've recently watched like a bunch of the iceberg YouTube videos that go through all of them.
Right.
I know
I
exactly
went
what you're
through
going
an
to.
experiment one, and one of them were controversial experiments done, and it was said that there is uncertainty whether that animosity was like naturally generated, which is like what people want to accept, that people are going to lose their minds. But then there's also a little bit of conjecture where they say that maybe there was a seed of aggression planted amongst people, and
I could see.
Yeah,
I could definitely
I can
see
see
it.
it,
Of course,
yeah.
yeah.
but
because
then,
if you have the power of like a scientist who's setting this all up, why not go a step further? That's what science does all the time.
Right.
If I was to look at that, I would probably say, I'm just, guessing, choice of words could create animosity.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Just by you three, I can go over to you and put my hand on your shoulder and say, all right, so for this experiment, you're going to be one of the guards. You guys will just be prisoners. Just that little gesture of saying my hand on your shoulder, almost congratulating you,
right.
and just waving you guys and just using the word just prisoners, immediately implants in your head that you are lesser than him.
Right.
So the subliminal seed is that quick.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Bioshock.
Yeah.
Would you kindly?
Yeah.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly?
It's words have the definition of what makes a person evil or good. But then at the same time, I'll use my other examples like the Hunger Games or Battle Royale for that instance. Group of people are pegged to kill each other. Why? Why do I have to kill my neighbor? So I could survive. Okay, great.
Right.
But
Most
what
movies have incentive.
I know, but the thing is, what if we all band together? They can't kill us all.
There is that, yes.
But like, where in our brains do we
It
flip that
challenges
script?
the
where-
idea of,
yeah.
of linking that individual identity to that communicative identity, because
Fear.
Katniss
Fear.
is an individual who's able to now use her ethos to basically make a whole army out of that with all the districts. And the commentary that the Hunger Games makes on like the government and media controlling the majority is very effective, I think, in that matter.
And all of this, honestly, all the intellectual conversation that we've been having, all the perspectives, all of the everything, I'm still floored. All stems from horror.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fear.
Yep.
And what scares you, what scares you, what scares you, what scares me, which I'm still trying to figure that out, but anyway, is just a very fun mythical creature because I have plenty of examples that could scare anyone, and I could just look at that like a stonewall face, but at the same time,
I don't think we're done talking
no, not at
about
all.
horror. I think
We definitely gotta keep this up.
We need to
It's
talk-
a never-ending topic. Right. I
Right.
mean, it truly
Luke
is.
just mentioned something. You
I-
literally just said it. What scares you?
Yeah,
What scares me?
Right.
What scares him?
Right.
That should be something.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean, shit, we haven't even gotten into this topic.
Oh,
Best movies, best actors in the horror movie. I mean,
what
so
makes
much-
a horror movie a horror movie?
Right,
Writers,
we've
directors.
only scratched the
Wow.
surface of it, and I think from the conversation that we had to land about it, the psychology behind it, I think was a first fantastic topic to
Yeah,
kick
because
it off.
not only does you have psychology, you have even subgenres like aesthetics. Aesthetics
Right.
itself is an entire study of what humans
For sure.
or react to in
Right.
general. What stimulates a response in your brain as the human animal species.
Oh, we talked
that
about
you
it
run,
tonight.
correct,
you know.
That's where I just have to throw the whole entire conglomeration as to the movie that I wanted to recommend to you, Rob, as the person that loses all peril and innocence. Smile.
Smile.
This is a movie that, like, for the longest time, like, I was told to avoid it just because it deals with a lot of dark natures of depression, suicide, as well as the whole entire concept of the pain cycle. When you look at a chart and you're in the hospital and you're showing exactly what pain you're feeling, 7, a nice smile. So basically you're neutral, you're not in pain, you're not in pain,
Sure.
but you have a smile on your face. But this smile is basically you're doomed because if you see the smile, you're dead.
Huh. So it's called Smile.
Yeah, and they're making a sequel that also
There it is, right?
looks
Yeah,
insane.
yeah.
Recommended movie of the week.
But
Smile.
but this was a movie that in my head I was like, this is really stupid. This is this is that. I had to sit down and watch it, and I was just like in awe with how fucked it got.
I actually
this
am.
whole
I
night-
want to watch that movie again based off of the chart that you're
Yeah.
talking about. I didn't even put that together.
Because there's like a little subtlety in the first act of it where you see her doing the therapy and everything, and then they pan
Right,
over to the chart.
you know what?
'Cause this
I want to go
whole
back and
night
watch
has
that again
honestly
now.
really only been about how
Hor-
PC and that sort of like,
Notion of the
Out.
beast. Yeah.
of horror, and horror has not only thrived, but have also already tackled those PC and inclusive issues decades
Yeah,
ago.
decades
And
past.
they've been producing, let's be honest, good people. People who are able to be constructive members of
Yeah.
society.
And voices to be-
Intellectuals
yeah.
that are able to speak to one another, and even if we don't agree, we can still respect each other. This all came from a horror.
Creates
That's what
discourse.
that's all
Yeah.
what this whole episode is about. And now what we're talking about is a whole other chapter
Because
of
that's
horror
yeah.
that we haven't even discussed.
Horror creates discourse. And I think that is essential for human progression.
I agree.
Yes, 100%.
All right, I think we're good.
We're wrapping it up.
Before we
Yeah.
finish, I'm gonna be thinking about that fucking tree tonight. Really, really bad. I'll end with that.
I will have to end it on this note, friends. I know it's been a while since we've uploaded an episode. Life has been life. But I will say episode 4 is a real rumble of fun times. Hint, hint, and no spoilers for the next one.
And I have to say I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos, podcasts, trying to get like refreshed again, because to be honest with you,
I'm right there with you.
I'm not really up to date on anything. A couple of things, but
I know anything and everything from what you guys are talking about.
I need names and dates. That's my big.
Look at you. You're getting excited. Look at you. Your whole body shaking. You're like, I want to get it out.
There's gonna be so much yelling.
And there's
next
gonna be
episode.
And Jimmy will be going through a table.
Oh, next episode is not going to be as nice as this one was.
But thank you guys so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends, and let us know what you think.
Nerds in the attic.
We're out.
Guys, so long. Take care.